Welcome. Welcome to suddenly tolerable Arizona, where the temperature is like 95 today, tops. It's been cloudy for 3 days. It's been really nice. Welcome. I love all of you. Welcome. Today I wanted to talk about practical spirituality. What is self-realization? What is God realization? And how do you get them? You already have the feeling of self in you, but you have to tease it out from all the other sensations. And it's not just one feeling. It's several that come together as a total feeling of self. God realization, on the other hand, requires that you be able to feel Shakti, the energies in the body, very strongly for a long time, along with a great deal of feeling of devotional love. But let's start with the self. How many here feel as if they know what their self is? They know what the feeling of self is. You know, I started practicing Zen, I think about 1969, by going to Philip Kapleau, and then to Mount Baldy with Sasaki in California. And I sat for hours every day, doing nothing. And if you do nothing well enough, everything personal disappears. The feeling of being a self or of any subjectivity just disappears. So I left Zen in about 1978 after being in it for 10 years because there was no emotion in Zen, no love in Zen. And I went to be with Muktananda's student, Shankarananda, whose satsangs were ever so sweet. But all the time that I was in Siddha Yoga, they kept saying over and over, love yourself. Worship yourself. Over and over, they said that. But after 10 years of Zen, I had no idea what they meant by self. I didn't know what the self was, what my self was. I had dwelled in Zen emptiness for so long. I didn't have a feeling of my body at all much. I was emptiness most of the time. And that emptiness at times became the whole world. And I identified with the whole world in different kinds of meditations. And I didn't know which was the real state. The silence and emptiness and oneness with the entire universe that I felt in deep meditation, or being an ordinary human being without a sense of self in the everyday world. It confused me. The differences in spirituality, points of view, philosophy confused me. By the way, Angela is joining us on her break at work. Welcome, Angela. So, I didn't know what the hell it meant to love myself. Then I was with Robert for many years. He talked about the self all the time, but the self he was talking about is not the self I talk about now. The self he talked about then was both the totality of consciousness and the witness of consciousness. It was kind of a transcendental self. It was witnessing your body, mind, and energies from a different dimension, so that you were not in the same dimension as the world, with its energies, with its happenings, with its objects. You became somewhere in nothingness, and you were not visible to yourself. Your body was visible. Some of your energy states may be visible. Your lungs were visible. But essentially, Robert's point of view is visual. You look inside for yourself. You look inside your emptiness for yourself. And one day you realize you who is looking at yourself is beyond the human, beyond the body. You're a witness in a different dimension, and you don't know who or what you are or what you look like or what you feel like. And this is their kind of enlightenment. This is the enlightenment of the Advaitins, the no separate self stuff, the oneness stuff, or Nisargadatta's absolute witness, which is in a different dimension. He calls it noumenal versus phenomenal. All the world is divided into it, phenomenal and noumenal. Phenomenal is the existential world, everything that can be experienced, including your body and your mind. The noumenal is your absolute self, which can never be found or witnessed. All that you have is the sure knowledge that you exist fundamentally as a subject in that other dimension, in the noumenal. All of Kant's philosophy and Hume's philosophy dealt with the phenomenal and the noumenal. But Westerners stopped asking about that 300 years ago, and everything became materialistic after that. There was not much place for the body, spirit. There was place for body. So I'm going to tell you how I became self-realized in the second way, the material way, the embedded in a body way, which is different from the transcendental way, the way of being outside of reality, being in the noumenal of absolute rest and silence and non-existence. I think spirituality that's aiming to take you there can be quite dangerous, because it dissociates you from the world. And some who get dissociated never make it back, and some of them kill themselves. So I think it's far more important to know the self that you can find within your own body. And here's a hint. Do you have to leave pretty soon? Angela, do you have to leave pretty soon? Okay. The key to self-realization of the manifest self, of the self that Muktananda talks about, not really the self that Ramana talks about, although he does a little bit, but it's the self of the energy people, the people that work with energies, of bhaktis, of tantra workers, of energy workers like quantum touch and Reiki. It's the self we all have within the body, the location of the feeling. And the way you find it is not using the visual sense of looking or trying to understand, which is all done in that inner space that's empty and without physicality. The way the self is found is, yes, by turning the vision inward so that you're aware of the emptiness inside, both the dark emptiness and when it becomes lighted by the light of consciousness. But it's by feeling, totally by feeling. You turn around from the intellect and you reject all knowledge. You reject all spiritual understanding. You reject ideas. Reject mental understanding. And you start feeling. You start feeling somewhere around in the area of your chest for that sense of being alive. It's too early at this point to look for yourself as a sense of self, but just that you're alive. And I first felt it, and a lot of people do, like a spark of electricity a couple of inches long, in or near your heart. Remember, I had been in emptiness for many, many years. So after leaving Robert and being in emptiness for 15 years, I turned around and stopped looking into the emptiness and started feeling into the emptiness. Dia did this too, also. She had been lost in the emptiness. That's one of the reasons we got together. She said she created her own self, and it can feel like that, but not really. What you're really doing is turning off the mind, turning off the visual sense, or at least just using it to guide your vision into your chest, into your gut, and start feeling for what's going on in there to see if you can find a self in there. And it started for me like a little spark of lightning. I just focused on it and it stayed there. And over the weeks and months, it grew. and grew and grew until I could feel it throughout my body. I could start feeling energies through my body. I could feel energies in my feet, in my legs, in my chest. And I started to feel alive instead of in the emptiness of Robert's world and of the Advaitins and of the Zen people. For the life of me, I could no longer understand why they wanted to be so dead and lifeless and in emptiness. So I started to come alive. And it was a wonderful feeling to be an ordinary person again, with thoughts and emotions and sensitivity, but just starting. And then a woman came into my life. She left me, and she let me know it very readily by taking out her iPad and reading Rumi to me, that she had searched for my face all her life and now had found me, and how jealous everyone was that they had not searched for my face as she had, because she found me. And then while we were sitting together in the car, she began having one orgasm after another while we were looking out at the ocean. At first I was frightened. I thought she was having some sort of grand mal seizure. But after 5 or 6 of them, I realized she was having orgasms without having sex. She wasn't masturbating. She was having orgasms. I was to learn later that they really weren't sexual orgasms. They were whole body orgasms that touched everywhere in her body, not only in her vagina, but in her gut, in her heart, reaching all the way up to her head and exploding in her head. She saw lights and energies, and she had orgasm after orgasm. And I kissed her. And we kissed for a long time. I thought I had finally found the love of my life. She came to me out of nowhere and seduced me into loving her by having orgasms while we're sitting in the car looking at the ocean. And it began a very tumultuous 2-year love affair, almost all of it at a distance of 1,800 miles. That's the distance we lived apart. She lived with her husband and 2 children. We were on the phone a lot. We were on Skype a lot. And the love grew. My God, did it grow. I had never felt anything like it. Such deep devotional love. And she used to say, "I love you," in a very deep and gravelly voice. And I could tell from the way she said it, she had reached a depth of love that was not human. It was not human. It was so large, so devotional, so magnificent, it became a thing in itself. It became total love that over the next several months turned into a thing in itself, like a balloon inside of me, of intense divine love, because it went way beyond the humanness that I knew or was capable of. This went on for a long time, months. And then one day, something happened and I became that love. I realized, yes, I loved Janet, but because I loved her, it was my love. I created it, or at least allowed it. The love was in me. And I identified with that love. And I became divine love. I became divine love. And suddenly, just very shortly after that, a week or two, I had a God realization experience. Imagine inside of yourself, looking down into your gut. Then you feel a rumbling deep down inside, something moving. Something so powerful. Something so enormous that it frightened me because I didn't know what the hell this thing was that was coming towards me. And as the power approached, the light of consciousness, which I always felt or had felt for 30 years or so, suddenly amped up. And the power of love and the power of that apparent entity inside of me, rising up inside of me, so incredibly powerful, so filled with light and energy, that moved upwards from my gut into my heart and there exploded and continued rising into my brain and exploding the whole time. It was God. I experienced God as fire, white fire, blinding energy, intense energy, like electricity, like being in the middle of a huge electrical bolt that was white. And it was continuous. It didn't stop like a bolt of lightning would. It just continued rushing out of me into the universe above. And it was God. And I worshiped this God. I fell to its feet, not literally, but in my mind. I felt this eruption of energy that was so pure, so loving. And I worshiped it. I fell to my knees, so to speak, because I couldn't do anything else. It took my life over. And then I realized I was witnessing God. And the feeling I had of God, that burst of energy within me, that incredible energy within me, that intense energy within me, that white electricity within me, but wasn't electricity. It had an entirely different feel, but it looked like a lightning that was alive. It had a feel about it. And the only thing I could say about it is it felt like a presence inside of me, a spirit within me that was an other. In other words, it was dualistic. There was I, who is spirit, who is worshiping this alive energy, which was lightning, which was totally alive in me now, rushing out into the space above as a constant lightning bolt, as big as my body, and more powerful than anything I had ever felt in my life. And I, as Ed, was witnessing it. This state, less intensely, has continued ever since that day in, 2011, 2010. Only now, I feel that energy in my body all the time as me. It fills every cranny of my body. I'm conscious of every cranny of my body. It's like an entity in me. There's another, let's say, witness, the witness I discovered with Robert that watches the whole process, that watches the spirit Ed with its lightest consciousness, with its feeling of the body, with its energy throughout the whole body, that is in constant communion with God, who is that larger entity within me, the other, whom I worship and from who I get my life. It's like the various religions talk about God the Father and God the Son. I was God the Son. I was the incarnated spirit, and God was the life force itself, not incarnated at all, but the universal life force that goes through all of us and which we can commune with inside of us. And in 1 minute, 1 second, I had realized both God and my own self as spirit, my own self as tactile sensation, knowing every particle of my being, every particle of my body, every particle was lit by light. And there was God there also, in me and around me, communing with me. And what I can tell you is then, after that, all I could do or felt like doing, which I didn't really do, is go around shouting, I have come alive. I have come alive. I am alive. And thus, for the first time, I knew my manifest self. And the one that said, realized that I had known my manifest self, was the self that lies beyond existence. The one that Robert talked about, the one that watched consciousness. That one realized myself as the manifest self, as light and energy within this body and sentience, the ability to know. And part of that ability to know was to know that God was in me also and around me and in every other one. And this is what I try to teach people, is to know God within yourself, because knowing God within yourself, with that, you know yourself also as spirit, as aliveness, as energies. And then you begin to know energies like you had never known before. You know, see energies and feel energies flowing everywhere within you and between you and other people. Sometimes it flows from the feet all over the body. Sometimes it starts in the heart and flows outwards to the hands to somebody else, or from your own heart to someone else that you love. Your hearts connect, are entrained, and love each other. You can reach out and touch other people with your heart. And in that way, Get their heart to start feeling. Get their heart to start feeling love. Get them to start feeling alive, the life force within yourself. In this sense, you learn how to do Shaktipat by taking your energy and giving it to another, in a sense, projecting it. And it's not that you actually project the energy, you feel like you're projecting the energy. But the person in their own energy field feels your energy, and something happens in your energy field that is very similar. Rolf, does this sound familiar? And all the time, constantly, you feel love for others, as well as love for God in you, and love for your own self, that life force within. And that's what we are, that's what God is life force. We're not talking about God like the Christians talk about God, or the Muslims talk about God as He who created the world of matter. We're speaking of the immanent God, the God of the life force, the God of spirit. We let matter take care of itself, even though all of it may arise out of matter. Matter itself is not sentient. It's not alive. It's not aware. But we are. We are. We are aware. We are that life force embodied. We are spirit incarnated in a body. But unless you hear this and feel this from another, and you feel the touch of God inside of you that wakens you up to your own existential manifest self, you live in a very boring manifest world that consists of getting up in the morning and going to work, paying bills, watching television, going to lunchrooms or restaurants, and listening to people talk about the most trivial things. I call this the mundane world. It's the world that has driven you mad most of your life until you turn to spirituality. It's the world of deadness and of not feeling. It's the world of rage also, anger at being stuck in this rotten, boring, senseless world of death and of work and work and work and effort, and of no happiness, of pointlessness. When you find God within and you find yourself within, there's no need to find anything else. No need to find meaning to life, because you are life itself, and not the life of the mundane world, but the life of God immanent, of God manifest, and of you manifest. And some days the energies get so strong, you just want to run around and say, I have come alive. I have come alive from emptiness, from consciousness. I have come alive from the unmanifest, from the noumenal world. I have emerged and come alive and aware and sentient in this world of energies. This is not a world that Robert ever talked about, nor Ramana really. Theirs is more Advaitin and intellectual understanding, and of emptiness, the experience of emptiness. And with that comes a sweetness over time. But outside of Robert's initial awakening experience, where he had that explosion of light that expanded through his brain and expanded through the universe and showed him the universe, after that, There's no mention of it in his current teachings except as something that happened to him when he was 14 years old, or 13, I forgot. It's not part of his teachings. His teachings before he died was ignore the world, don't react to the world, don't react to problems. In other words, die to the world. And this way that I'm teaching is the exact opposite. You sink into your body. You become totally alive in your body. You no longer ignore the body. You no longer ignore what's happening in the world because you love everything. And you want others to know your love. You want others to know the energies like you've known them. You want to be able to heal and teach other people how to heal with your energies. Or you want to be able to give people Shaktipat by awakening up their energies, by touching them, or doing it at a distance. Or you do it with your voice. You tell them about your own experience of God and of self, and you do it in such a way that they begin to feel it or imagine that they can feel it. Or else it lights them with such love that they, for the first time, are on a path of the bhaktis, a path of love. It happens in so many different ways. Like with Steve Eckert, who I met 6 years ago when Dia and I were giving a workshop. We were going around giving Shaktipat. And Steve looked in my eyes, and his face melted, and tears came into his eyes, and they became very soft and loving. And I touched him on his head, and that's all I had to do. And now he's had a big enlightenment experience. And he's had many, many, many similar and smaller experiences during the past 6 years. This is what I want you to do. I don't want you to just be self-realized. I want you to become gurus. I want you to become teachers. I want you to give this gift to others. I love you all. My God, I love you all. I wish you could feel it. I could wish you could feel the depth of my love. Janet said of my love that never before had she experienced any such love, nor since then has she experienced such love. Yet now she feels love around her all the time, that she is being loved by everything. So you learn how to transmit this love to others with the way you talk about love and the way you talk about others. People can feel it. People can see it in your demeanor, your face, hear it in your voice. And you learn how to give this to others after you've had the full experience for yourself. But remember, it took Janet 7 or 8 years. It took me 2 or 3 years. It took Steve 6 years. But it's a path of love. No longer thinking about things. No longer thinking about manifest and unmanifest. God as this or that. Self is this or that. Because now you know what self is. It's the electric spirit, the electrified spirit in yourself that is aware of your own body, aware of its own self, aware of God, and even aware of nothingness. It's something you learn. When you go to sleep, you're in nothingness. There is no self-awareness then. There's no awareness of anything unless you have dreams. And after you come out of sleep in the morning, you arise out of nothingness. And for a minute or so, you can remember what it was like being in nothingness. And at one point, when you become a certain degree of concentration aware, you're able to play with this, to go back and forth from nothingness into the fullness of awakening, back into nothingness and coming out of nothingness. It's a bit like coming out of tar or dark motor oil, or the original kind of oil before it's kind of comes out of your ground. And you sort of drag it with you into consciousness. And then it evaporates and disappears and you're fully awake. But the thing is, you get to know what death is like. And what slipping into death is like. And it's no longer a threat. And after this kind of awakening experience, this kind of enlightenment experience, you're afraid of nothing. It's because you suddenly know who you are. And you become like the strongest in the world mixed martial arts fighter. You feel nothing can harm you. That you are a mountain. You may not look like a mountain or act like a mountain, but you feel like a mountain. You feel as strong as the world. And as a matter of fact, almost nothing negative happens to you after that. A lot cannot happen to you for a long period of time. But dangerous stuff doesn't seem to happen to you. Now come. Enjoy sitting with me in your own beatific energy, your own sentience and ability to feel and be aware. Sit with me and your own God, the life force, feeling the life force in you. And by that, I mean your sense of being alive. Feel your aliveness. Love your aliveness. Worship your aliveness. And you do this and it stays with you. It stays with you. It stays with you. I'm going to leave you with this energy right now rather than talking and doing any dialogue, because I want you to hold on to what I just gave you and see if you can go with it and continue it. Maybe listen to some chanting music. Maybe just staying in your own presence. I'm going to sit here with you for another 5 minutes or so. You can go if you want, or you can stay if you want. And then I'm going to go silently. So you can stay in the silence if you want, and the love with, or if you want, or anything if you want.